Wasteland Weaponistics Episode 14, the Thompson Submachine Gun. The Thompson was first seen in Fallout 2 and has reappeared in Fallout Tactics, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, and Fallout 76 at the time of making this video, making it a pretty popular weapon to be included in a Fallout game. The version of the Thompson that is included in each game varies, as some games use the ones based on the 1920s version of the Thompson, while we also see the M1 World War II style Thompson being used as well. In this video, I'm going to include the laser RCW as well, rather than make a separate video for it, because it has very little lore, and its design is heavily based on the Thompson. Since I am a channel that covers these weapons in terms of the Fallout universe's lore, I'm going to keep the real-world history very short, as there are far better channels for this than mine for real-world history of weapons. But for a little real-world history of the Thompson, its design started during World War I by General John T. Thompson, based around a patent from Naval Commander John Bell Blish. This is the Blish principle. To describe the Blish principle in theory, it's two different metals under high pressure will stick together as one metal. I like to describe the Thompson as the bee of the firearm world. If you know the saying, according to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly, etc., etc., I like to apply that to the Thompson as well, because the original 1920s style Blish locking system wasn't really a locking system, yet the Thompson kind of just works anyway. Only for the later M1 Thompson to be simplified into a standard blowback to save on cost. The Thompson fires the 45 ACP pistol round originally designed for the Browning Colt pistols, though variants in other calibers have been made as well, like ones in 38 Super, 9mm, and even a limited run of 10mm chambered Thompsons made for the FBI in the 1990s. As a test bed for the 10mm round in an SMG. Now onto the Fallout universe. Well, if you don't know, the Fallout universe follows our timeline until about the time of the Divergence. This happens around the 1960s. In our timeline, the Thompson was used by the military until about the 1970s, with police using it much longer in some cases, like the St. Louis police auctioning off 27 1928 style Thompsons in 2014 that had been stuck around in their inventory. However, we can see in the Fallout universe that Tommy gun was used much longer. How do we know this? Well, in Fallout 4, on the Navy ship, the USS Riptide, the boat you see crashed into the drawbridge leading into Boston, there is a skeleton of some type of military personnel, and on his corpse, there is a Thompson. Meaning that the Thompson was still in service all the way up to the year 2077, giving the Thompson around 150 years of service. Why did the Thompson never fall out of favor with the US military in the Fallout timeline? Well, my guess would be that the 9mm round wasn't adopted by the military in the 1980s like it was with our military. And 45 ACP stayed in frontline service much longer until the adoption of the 10mm round, as we do not see as many 9mm chambered firearms in the Fallout universe compared to 45 and 10mm. It could also be that the National Guard were the ones still using the Thompson while the standard military had switched to something more modern. In our timeline, National Guard units are usually behind the standard military when it comes to equipment. Some of the best examples of this are the use of M1 Garands by the PA National Guard even as late as the 1970s, or the use of Vietnam-era M16A1s in the LA riots of the 1990s. So now we head on to the post-war years. For the West Coast wasteland of Fallout 2, here we find the 1920 style of Thompson, and it is primarily used around the city of New Reno by bouncers for various casinos and clubs. That's the only real use of the SMG in the area. For the Midwest wasteland of Fallout Tactics, again we see the Thompson is in the style of the 1920s one, but here it plays even less of a role than in Fallout 2. The most prominent case is that the former Brotherhood of Steel Paladin, Latham, later to be known as Gamoran, is known to have carried one. Moving back west for the Mojave Wasteland of Fallout New Vegas, here we see the M1 military-style Thompson, as well as the laser RCW. The Thompson wasn't added to New Vegas until the Honest Hearts DLC, so none of the large factions are equipped with these. But we do see the tribal Whitelegs using M1 Thompsons, as they called them Storm Drums. Why they call them Storm Drums is unknown, as very few of them are using the drum attachment. Now, the mod attachments you can get in New Vegas are the drum magazine and the cuts compensator. For the laser RCW, it's a different story. The laser RCW was included in the main game, however it has very little lore. All we know about it is what Josh Sawyer has said about it. Here's a quote of his about the laser RCW. "I thought there should be an automatic laser weapon available earlier than the Gatling laser, and figured a Thompson-based SMG using ECPs would be cool. I was worried people would be mad about it since they didn't get a quote-unquote real Thompson, but it seems most people will like it." If we take this quote at lore value, it could mean that the laser RCW was a precursor to heavy energy weapons like the Gatling laser, as it does use the same ammunition style of electron charge packs. The laser RCW, since it was included in the base game, is used by the factions of the Wasteland, most notably by the Brotherhood of Steel Mojave chapter. The energy gun-loving traders, the Van Graffs, can sell you a couple of these as well. The laser RCW is also carried by the Fiends Raider gang, especially by the members that occupy Vault 3. It could be that Vault 3 was armed with these laser weapons, and this is where the Fiends got them after raiding the place. One thing to also note is that everyone's favorite lore-breaking exosuits, the Y-17 trauma harnesses, can also spawn with them. Some interesting notes about the laser RCW is it has these strange green parts on the weapon. I'm not sure what these are supposed to be, as they're not the same style of green as plasma weapons. Another weapon that has a similar style of green on it is a unique Gatling laser, the Spirtle Wood 9700. This unique Gatling laser fires green lasers. Laser RCW doesn't fire green lasers, it fires the standard red lasers. This can mean that the laser RCW was originally meant to fire green lasers at one point. Now, for whether the laser RCW is a modified Thompson or an entirely new manufactured weapon, it is unknown. The weapon is dropped from the YT-17 trauma harnesses, and since there is no terminal lore on the weapon, it could be that Big MT designed it, as they also seemingly designed the Lair laser rifle. Now, the laser RCW has a single modification, the Electron Pack Recycler, which replenishes 1 round every 4 rounds fired, giving you effectively around a 33% increase on ammo per electron charge pack. Now back to the standard Thompson with Fallout 4 and its Commonwealth Wasteland. This version of the Thompson is based on a mix between the M1 and the 1920 style Thompson, but with the controls being mirrored to the left side of the weapon instead of the right. The most prominent user of the Thompson in the post-war Commonwealth are the Triggermen, a Prohibition gangster-style faction that occupy several places in the Commonwealth. They use the Tommy gun so much they even have a dedicated loading screen mentioning their use of it. Another user of the Thompson is the Good Neighbor Neighborhood Watch. This is probably due to the Good Neighbor's relation with the Triggermen. Less common is the standard Raider, which can sometimes spawn with these as well. In Fallout 4, the Thompson is modifiable and able to use different attachments, from upgraded receivers to glow and reflex sights and muzzle attachments like compensators and even a silencer. Finally, we go back in time to Fallout 76's Appalachian Wasteland. Here we find the same model of Thompson as Fallout 4. The only difference in attachments here is we find a prime receiver, allowing the weapon to fire the Ultrasight 45 ACP rounds. Other than that, it's pretty much exactly the same. We find the SMG being used by the Fire Breathers, the combat-focused subdivision of the Responders, made up of firefighters, police, and other government services. One can also be found in the Brotherhood Armory, located within Fort Defiance. However, this is a random spawn, and isn't always there. Other than this, there is a few spread through the various locations around the map, like in the supply closet of the Camden Amusement Park. Now for the unique versions of the Thompson. There are 2 unique versions, both from Fallout 4. One is the Silver Submachine Gun, a custom version used by the Silver Shroud, a pre-war comic book hero of the Fallout universe. This weapon has no special effects, just a custom skin that makes it shinier. In Fallout 4, the weapon is acquired from everybody's favorite comic book loving ghoul, Kent Connolly, during the Silver Shroud questline. The other unique is Spray and Pray, which is sold by the traveling merchant Cricket. Spray and Pray has the unique ability to fire explosive rounds. Well, that's about it for the Thompson in the Fallout universe. Hopefully it's included in the upcoming Fallout TV show, as it is one of my favorite guns of all time. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe to this channel, as well as my main channel, Trooper Fofo.